Okay, so I don't know. I didn't go through all of it, to be honest. I just read those two. I know this guy is quite interesting, and I don't. Are we supposed to use C? Maybe not. Maybe. Yeah, probably you can do it in Python only. So let's just focus on Python. Just so you know, you can use this IDE from very good people from Harvard or ADX or whoever made it. You can use this as well. So let's not focus on this. So let's have a look here. I don't have that much time to go step by step, but I'm gonna just go through how did I come to this solution for the question one. Okay. By the way, like you can see my code now, and you can act as if we were just sitting next to each other and we're, you know, sharing knowledge and we're studying together. I have no problem if you're gonna take some of my lines, some of my code, and you know make it your own. Just one thing, make it look like it's your own first, and secondly, obviously understand it. And but obviously if you want to just listen to me and then make it on your own, it's even better because that means you got it fully. um Anyway, that's just a disclaimer. I don't want to see somebody just copying and pasting my code. Doesn't make sense to me and to you, but I have no problem for you to read it and even rewrite it from the beginning to the end. But then again, make it your own. Make it look different, different names, different graphics, and so on. And um, so that's Python. As you could see in C, you have to import some stuff there. You import stuff in here as well. So this is kind of like a library. We call it a library. So it's like a library of codes that will do some functions instead of coding it on your own, or you can create your own library where you have certain functions that you want to use in the future, and then you can import it that way. You just have to make sure this is in the same folder, or not sure how it works exactly, but if you write just time, it means Python has that library included in itself. So it knows if you write time, it knows you're looking for the library called time. Okay, so this try and accept is the way to kind of avoid seeing errors. Errors that often could be just a just like let's see. See this? This is my error message. So if and in here I can just go to CA1, question 1, and just run it. And it asks me to give it a file name. So I have to give it one of those files, otherwise it's not going to work. So if I write 320.txt, enter, it gave me an input from the end of the code. So the input file is 320 integers long, and it took it only that split of second, and that's it. And the exit code is 0. It's not something I programmed. It's always kind of like a last message saying, yeah, it's fine, code is 0. Okay. So, but if I run it again and wrote in, let's say, nothing, as, enter, oh, something went wrong. Is the file name correct? And that's what I did here. So I asked it to, in here, input a file name, and I gave it a prompt saying, hey, could you give me a file to read, the name of it? And if it works, try it. If it works, if I put in a name that works, then go skip this point, do this, and then skip this point and start doing my code. But if there's any problem, any error, something that doesn't give, something that stops the code because there's problem, it can go on, like giving a wrong name that isn't here, it's going to go to accept and say, hey, there's something wrong, please exit the code. That's how you exit the program here, I think. that's how I do it. And as you can see, it went wrong. And actually, it gave me a code 0 because I asked it to do it, and I said exit, and it just smoothly exit the code. So there's no error. There's nothing that I didn't intend to happen. So it's code 0. Okay, and then okay, so we were discussing if we're supposed to use the time, the actual time, to count how long does it take to do certain action, like to run the algorithm. But I'm still not sure. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a counter inside of my code as well. So we'll have time, the human time, the seconds, minutes, hours, but I'll also have how many steps how many times did it have to move the integers until we got to the point where we were supposed to get, uh, namely sort the integers. But so yeah, anyway, and then in here, um, right, so let me just explain what happened here. So if you Google, and that's how you have to approach, I'm not going to go through all the questions, I'll just go through question 1. All I have is question 2 as well, which is slightly differently approached because I made a definition of a function, which I, instead of rewriting 1, 2, 3 times this bit, I use this, I put it in here, I changed it slightly so it fits question 2, and that's all you can see now. So instead of 3 times those long functions, you can see neatly just 1, 2, 3. Okay, but anyway, so how you approach, I'm very messy, I shouldn't be a teacher. How you approach your coding. You write Python how to open files. Okay, then you're looking, I like this website, Python for Beginners, because I am a beginner and it explains stuff to me that I understand. But there is, oh yeah, I was supposed to explain one little thing here. Where's print? Let's look for print. Here, no. Yeah, no, here. So as you can see in some sources, you'll see Python 2. This is Python 2. This is print, and then no brackets and whatever you want to print. And in this case, it's file.read, whatever. It's some sort of a variable that they want to print. But in this case, oh, what the hell? No. So basically what I want to say is just be careful. Sometimes you'll get a code in different language, and this isn't the language that you're using. You're using Python 3 and this is Python 2. So just keep in mind if something doesn't work, it could be because you have to make some small cosmetic changes. So like brackets or quotation marks or whatever. Okay? So what I did, you read your CA and it says write a program that reads in a file. That's the whole thing I have to know to make a first step. Okay, so I go in here, read and write. Okay, I don't want to write, so blah blah blah. I read it before, so that's why I'm going very quickly through it. Why do you show it? No, I don't care. Go. Jesus Christ. Okay, and so you have your open file, how you open the file, and there the modes that you can use. So there is a read, there is a write, there is append, which is you have to read to see, and there is special read version where you can read and write, I think. Yeah. So and it explains kind of how it works. You can copy those codes. Just be careful, those quotation marks don't work in this IDE, so you have to change them every single time you copy something from this website. You have to change those into the valid quotation marks. Okay, so you can play around. To be honest, if I was not if I was you, I did it. what I do is before I start coding, I start playing around with the function I'm looking at, something I want to learn. So instead of going straight to coding and skip some steps, I like to actually go through and read all that text, read it, and see, okay, so there is something here. Okay, that looks interesting. Okay, there is a piece of code. I want to see how it works. Okay, and I start working with it, and then I can see there is a bit of code that I can copy and paste and see how it works and play around so I have a feel of how it works and what's the proper way to use it in my code instead of just take the first thing I see that seems to be relevant, like here. Open text file R, fine, yeah, but that's actually what I'm using. So basically what I did was I found this website, I read it, I took this, so that's my F. If you go here and you see, okay, open, read, yeah, so this is my file, and I called it, in my case, file to read equals input. I changed it slightly. Oh no, sorry, this is just a string that I want to name. I want to just grab a name of a file that I'm going to put it in here, okay? So first I prompt the user to give me a string, which is a name of a file, and then I put it in here as a variable instead of, like in this case, it's just set in stone. That's going to be always set file txt, well, text txt should be. Okay, I gave it a bit of flexibility. I said, hello user, give me the name. You can do it. I don't have to put it in here. And then that variable, which is just a string, goes in here and it gives you that kind of effect. Okay, and then comma, the mode is read. Yeah, I want to read the file, I don't want to write in it. And then there is this crafty little thing I invented, which is very easy, but it's actually after using C, it blew my mind because it's cool how you go from, so read file is an object of type file. So this is your string, this is your file object. Yeah, it's two different things. This is a file like integers or strings or float or whatever is the object that you know until now. File is also is a type of an object. Okay, so I want a string list to be made of this, and as you can see here, I am pointing towards, yeah, I want to make it list. Obviously, given a name list doesn't make it a list, but the way I shaped it, as a result, it is a list actually, and I'll tell you how. So this is my file in here. This is object file, but see that dot? And you'll have to read a bit more. So if you read this, actually, if you read this little piece on writing and reading files, you'll see, Jesus, why is it so slow? It's extremely slow. Okay. That website maybe isn't the greatest. I didn't use it that long. Maybe it's, I can see stuff happening here, so maybe it's just gathering my personal information. Here, you'll see, and it will explain what that dot is. So file is your file, and then you put a dot in here. You can do it with strings and with whatever you want, as long as there's like a function that you're looking for. So this is like a, is it called function, or I think it's called attribute. I think it's attribute, but I don't want to mess in your head. But basically, it's like a thing that you can do with this type of object. So if it's a file, you can read that file. If it's a string, you can split that string. So we can see in here, you can split. And that's what I did with this string, because as you can see here, so when I use read, I turn my file into a string altogether. Yeah? And then, so this is my first step I did in this one line. And then I put another dot. Okay, so take this string, it's not a file anymore, it's a string, and replace, and replace, and this is another attribute or function or whatever that we can do with the string. and it works like this. You look for this data, \n, and as you know, when you open this guy, you can't see it here, but for the computer to know that it has to make a new line, it has to do this. Yeah, \n. This is every time you see a new line, this is how it works in ASCII world. Okay, so computer, so find this, comma, and replace it with this. It has to be in the quotation marks. So if you're a bit confused why you can see 3 commas, it's because of there's the first thing, which is in quotation marks, which is find new lines, comma, then replace it with comma, which is in quotation marks, comma, and there is something else. If you Google what is replace, so if you go to Python, replace in string, whatever. Method. Oh yeah, that's the name, method. Okay, so if you see a dot, this guy here is a method. Okay, so that's the object that I'm working on, and that's the method I'm using. Okay, I'm not gonna confuse you anymore. So replace, and it's gonna give you, oh yeah, and you have your parameters. Old, so what I was looking for, new line. New is the comma, I want to replace it with comma, and then max is if this option argument max is given, only the first count. Okay, so that's going to stop at the number that you're put in, so just replace 5 first occurrences. Okay, so I left it empty. And then, so I have again a very, very long string, because before it was like this, but instead of seeing it, if you open that string, if I printed this string here, read until here, that would be a very long string that consists those numbers and then \n, then another number, \n, another number, and so on. And that would be something that you would see if we printed this bit. And then if we printed this bit, you would see exactly same, except that wouldn't be \n, that would be comma, because we replaced it, yeah, and then like this and so on. So that's the only thing I've done with this replace thing here. And I did it before because I want to split that string, this guy here, into a list, and that's how I achieve my list in here. And that's how, if you want to check what is that string list a type of, you would see this is actually a list, because I went all the steps until here. If I deleted this, I would have a string, but because of split, I create a list that takes a string, and every time there is a comma, it creates new entity. So that's the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. That's the kind of a list that it creates, and it creates of any file that I put in here as a file to read. Okay, so, and I call this string list because it creates a kind of a string list. So every time it's actually, yeah, it's a string. It's not an integer. And if you print it, I recommend to print everything you do. That's how I debug. Whatever I do, print it. Whatever I want to know, I want to print it, and I have shitload of stuff happening in here, but it's fine because I want to know what's happening. And sometimes, like, I caught myself in this while loop in here, and I didn't know what's happening, and I was looking at the computer doing nothing, and then okay, I stopped it here, and I went and I wrote in, tell me what you're doing, kind of, print in, let's say, this parameter and this parameter, or this variable in here, and it was just running, and it was kind of caught in the while forever loop. That's how I knew I made a mistake there. Okay, so that's a string. So it's a list of strings. I named it string list, but so I know that it's a list of strings. So this is how you start. So you have to import time and then you start time like this. So it reads what time it is and it remembers it. So at the end, it can go and see, okay, so let's take another time, which is after I've processed, and subtract the start time from that time. And then we have, it's all in seconds. Anyway, so we go in here. So I want to start my integer list. So it's like sorry, like a string list. It's going to be exactly the same, but I want them all to be integers. So I don't have to think if they're working properly, because then I want to sort them. You can't sort. Well, I think you can sort the strings, but it's not the way you would think they're going to get sorted. Not always, at least. And also, I realized at the end of every file, there is one empty gap, which would make some sort of a error. So to avoid it, I made a for loop here. So for every string, so you call it whatever, you can call it index. For every index or for every entity, for every whatever you want to call, those guys here. Yeah, if you have a list, so that's the for every whatever index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, for every whatever in that file, that list. So that means as many, it's gonna do a loop as many times as there is entities inside of that list. Okay, so it's very straightforward. If you did C before, oh no, I closed it. But if you did C before, you actually have to specify, how many times do you want to do it, even if you can do exactly the same, but you have to say, do it as long as my index or whatever I call it is lesser than the length of the list. Yeah, in this case, you just write string in list and that's it. And that's done. You don't have to write any more. It's very straightforward. And then if this string, first of all, if this string doesn't equal nothing, like here at the end, it's nothing, do my code and just go one by one and append. So that's another method you can do with the, see, Control Z. Yeah, this is another method you can use with the list, and it appends, which is like adds another entity, another how do you call it? I can't think. Which is an integer of string. And why string? Because, and Python makes it very easy for you. It just takes that entity. I could write this string string list string enter and give it 0 and then 1 and 2 or sorry, let's say count, and then create a special count that would count the steps I've done and just go one by one by one by one. But beautiful Python made it very easy, and you can just say for every string use this and change it into integer, and that's how you do it. Okay, and that's it. That's all you have to do for making an integer list. That's a whole code that takes a list of strings and makes them integers. And in case there is an empty gap, it just doesn't do it. It would just skip to another point. Okay, and then we have for I in range 1, 2. Okay, so there are two fors in here. So one for is constructed that way, that you say for every entity in certain object, do this. So every time if there is 100 of entities into this list, do it 100 times. In this case, you can say do it for e times I times, like index. Probably in Python, it's in when you use PyCharm, you can use longer names, because then if you want to write a longer name, you just start using it. So you can see I can just press enter, and it gives me that name, so it's quicker, and I don't make mistakes. I don't make typos. Okay. And then we have, okay, so we have for I, so that many times. So that I is like an index. It's going to go from whatever I said as beginning to whatever I said as the end, okay? And that's why I'm using I, because I want to kind of count with this I. I want to go from certain number, which isn't 0, it's 1 in this case, and it's in purpose, because when I do sort, when I do sort, I don't start from 0, I start from 1, and I compare it to the 0th element of that list, okay? So that's why I used 1 in here, and then I want to go all the way to the end as long as the integer list is, okay? So I want to go from 1 to whatever is the length of that list, okay? And then I'm setting the current integer with the whatever integer is of that eth index. So in this case, at the beginning, very first step, it's going to be that integer, but because I changed it, it's not going to have quotation marks anymore. So all the quotation marks are gone. They're all integers. It's fine. I take it, and I can mathematically manipulate and check and see if that's bigger or that's bigger. Okay. So I say, okay, so set it as for this first for loop, this first step of many steps, as many as the length of the list. For this first step, I want the current integer to be this, okay? So that's set in stone. That's remember, it's not going to get lost as long as we are in this one step, okay? And then, okay, so current position is 1 because I'm on the first, I'm doing the first point. And then we do the while loop. So you have fantastic opportunity to check how to do loops, because there is for that kind of for, there is that kind of for, and there is that kind of while. And this while loop is doing, and you can make a forever loop with this loop, because if you kind of say, as long as 1 is bigger than 0, do this. That means forever, because always 1 is bigger than 0. So if you write in here 1 and then bigger than 0, then it's gonna go forever. That loop is gonna go as long as you want. And I made this little breaker as well. You can do it both ways. I made an if statement here, but you can just add it here. You can just write and something else, another thing I want to make sure is happening. Then do that while. So there are two ways. You can add and the like another not statement, or is it statement? I think it is. No. Let's say, that kind of check, logical test. Oh yeah, logical test. Or you can do this as if the current position becomes smaller than 0. No, sorry. If the current position is bigger than 0, then do my code. Otherwise, just break the loop. Okay, break from the loop. If the current position, because every step, every time I do that while, it goes by -1, -1, -1, -1, yeah? So it goes to the left, to the left, to the left. You know how the insertion sort works. You take this and you check, is it smaller than this? Yeah, okay, okay, and you just go to the left, to the left, to the left. So if we get to the first point, and that's basically what it says. If you're on the position 0, which is the very beginning of the list, stop doing anything. That's it. That's all we have to do. Then we say the integer of the current position, which is in this case would be 0 because we went all the way to the very beginning of the list. So that would be current position is 0. So, and then we put that integer that we took and we were testing it over and over and over and over again. And we just assign this integer to that position in your list, okay? So, and that's it. So you have you have two loops. There's a loop in a loop. So first you do your jumping from right to left, and then you go back to going step by step in your list. So you're going to the next point of your list, and then you do your while loop over and over again, as long as your current integer is smaller than the integer that you're checking. So basically you're taking this guy and you see, is that smaller than this one? If it is, jump. If it isn't, just stay there, and that's it. That's how you sort it. Have a look. I know it's very vague what I'm saying now because I don't have time to go into the depth of it. But at least you have some explanation. And then you have this guy here, and then that's how you see how much time did it take. So if you run it and say we want to check 640 txt, enter, it takes about 0.6 of second. If we run it again and say 5120 txt, ooh, that's bigger. It's exponential. It's not exponential, it's quadratic. Quadratic? I think it's called quadratic. So it's to the power of 2, n to the power of 2. So the bigger it gets, it's multiplied by itself, and that's why it gets so much longer to sort this. That took 3.8 of a second, yeah? So the curve is going faster. The bigger it gets, the faster it gets higher. It's not linear. It's a quadratic curve, basically. Anywho, and you get your print finally. So just in case we want to make a like this line break, just makes a line break here, and then it tells you, okay, so you put in the file which is that big. Obviously, if you want to use my code, if you want to support your code with my code, make sure this looks very, very different, okay? So it doesn't look like this because it's going to be very, very shady. But you can use those principles that I'm going to just explain now. So you put in quotation marks, text, whatever you want to get printed, just write it in and that's going to show. And then you can put a comma there. And let's say in this case, I want to know what's the length, and that's how you use the function length. Len brackets integer list brackets, and then again comma, quotation mark, whatever you want to write in, quotation mark, and close the print, okay? And that's how you write the first line. And then I made an if statement here, if test, because there is I found a nice way to organize the time to make it look better. Like if you have seconds, it's obviously better to see, just that many seconds. But if you go, if it goes above, let's say, a minute, which I did here, if the elapsed time is bigger than 60, then make it pretty. Then use that fancy code I found and make it look like hour, minutes, seconds, yeah? But otherwise, if it's smaller, if the elapsed time is smaller than 60, that's basically else in here, then just use elapsed time, which is, and then round it, okay? So it doesn't get, it would be way longer. I just want to go as long as 6 digits, okay? And that's it. That's the first CA. I'm very tired, guys, so I'm gonna just wrap it up now. Let me see, how long am I chatting? Where is it? I'm not, okay. Over half an hour. Probably sick of me now. So just a slight difference here, as I said at the beginning or sometime during the tonight's chat. I put in this guy, so it's like a sorting algorithm, let's say. Oh no, sorry, this guy here. And just remember about the indentation. In Python, it's very important. If you change the indentation, it's not just how it looks, it's also how it works. So just you can see if you have your for, as long as you're on that line, as long as you don't hit something else, that's in that for loop. Yeah. So that for loop goes as long as here, boom, I hit elapsed. Okay, so that's not inside of for. So whatever is before something I'm hitting on this line, boom, is inside of that for. So it goes in here. I changed it slightly. So again, you can have a look here how it's done. Sorry. Okay. So I defined insertion sort time, which basically returns the elapsed time of one go, kinda. I'm gonna add in count as well, so it's not gonna be just time, as there will be a count as well. So you'll see it later. No, you won't. No, you can figure it out. Give it a thought. But basically that's what it returns, the elapsed time. So then if I use this, and you'll see it here, boom, that's going to give me an elapsed time. So see, this is my function that I wrote, and then I give it a parameter, which is my integer list for this file, because you need to create 3, so 1 2 3, and then so I use this list in here, and that whole thing, this bit here, this bit here, all this will give me the elapsed time of this loop using this list. Okay, so that's the difference, and then I create the way how I explain what happened with those 3 files, and it's going to take over a minute, so I'm not going to run it, but basically yeah, it's similar to the question 1, but it's just for 3 files, and it explains how long did it take, blah blah blah. Okay, I hope it helps a bit, at least to start moving towards towards well, starting even the CA, and give me a shout if you need any more pointers. Like I can't help you more than that. I showed you my code. I'm not ashamed of it. I showed mine, you show me yours. Ha ha ha. And no, don't show me. No, well, you can show me yours and ask me what's wrong with it. You can do that. You can send it to me, and I can put it in and see where the problem is. That's no problem. If I have time, obviously, but there's not that much time to Monday, so maybe um during weekend I can have a look at it. Anyway, when I crack on question 3, I think I might put it in as well, just for you guys to have a look, and because I know it's a bit complicated as you look at it. It's actually not that complicated if you go through lecture 3, and there is this explanation here, which is basically what it says is the time at the end of a day, the time is only this bit, only a n to the power of b. Yeah, so some constant here of n, which changes depending on the size of the file, to the power of b, which is constant as well, for every algorithm. Yeah. So you just have to figure out what is the a and what is the b, and you'll know, and you can estimate the time for bigger sizes. Even if you don't have that file, you can estimate how long will it take to sort something. Okay. Anyway, good luck, and let me know if you even use my video, and if you have any questions, or if you need any clarification or anything, just give me a shout. Bye.